Ask visitors what they remember most about Lancaster County, and it is rarely the covered bridges or the horse-drawn buggies rolling past cornfields. More often, it is a meal, a slice of shoe-fly pie eaten standing up at a roadside stand, a plate of chicken and dumplings passed down a long farmhouse table by a stranger who became a host for the afternoon. Ask them why it tasted so good, and most people struggle to explain it. There was no chef, no menu, no plating designed to impress, often just a farmhouse kitchen and a wood stove that had been burning since before sunrise. And yet, the memory of that meal tends to outlast dinners at restaurants that cost 50 times as much. Why would food built from humble ingredients, cooked without a single modern appliance, leave such a lasting impression? The answer has less to do with secret recipes and far more to do with time, geography, and a philosophy of living that most of the modern world quietly left behind. To understand Amish food, it helps to understand where it came from. The Amish trace their roots to the Swiss Anabaptist movement of the 16th century, and many of their culinary traditions traveled with them to Pennsylvania in the early 18th century, blending with the cooking of German-speaking settlers who became known as the Pennsylvania Dutch, a name derived from Deutsch rather than any connection to the Netherlands. That fusion of Swiss, German, and Alsatian farmhouse cooking became the backbone of what many people now recognize as classic Amish fare: hearty stews, dense breads, pickled vegetables, and fruit preserves designed to last through long winters. This was never cuisine created for restaurants or admiration. It was cuisine created for survival on family farms, and that single fact still shapes the way it tastes today. Geography played a quiet but powerful role. Pennsylvania's Lancaster County, along with later settlements in Ohio, Indiana, and beyond, offered rich farmland well suited for dairy cattle, orchards, and vegetable gardens. Because many Amish families farmed the land they lived on, meals were built around whatever was ripe, ready, or freshly slaughtered that week. There was no concept of shipping strawberries across a continent in the middle of winter. If it was not the season for something, it simply was not on the table. This seasonal rhythm, which modern food culture is only now rediscovering through farm-to-table movements, was never a trend for Amish households. It was simply how food had always worked, long before refrigerated trucks made year-round abundance possible everywhere else. That rhythm also explains why preservation became such a defining skill in Amish kitchens. Canning, pickling, smoking, and root cellaring were not nostalgic hobbies, but essential technologies for stretching a summer harvest across a cold Pennsylvania or Midwestern winter. A jar of home-canned tomatoes or a crock of fermented cabbage represents hours of careful, unhurried labor, often done communally among women in a household or extended family. Food preserved this way develops flavor differently than food frozen or shipped because the process itself, whether through fermentation, slow cooking down a fruit into butter, or careful salting, concentrates and transforms taste rather than simply pausing it. Many visitors who taste Amish chow chow, a tangy pickled vegetable relish with roots in Pennsylvania Dutch kitchens, or apple butter simmered for hours in a copper kettle, are tasting techniques that predate modern food science, but achieve remarkably similar results through patience alone. Baking deserves its own attention because it may be the single area where Amish cooking earns its strongest reputation. Traditional methods still commonly include kneading dough by hand, allowing yeast breads to rise slowly at room temperature rather than rushing them with additives, and baking in ovens that many households heat with wood, though propane and other fuels are also used depending on the community and its ordnung, or the set of unwritten rules that govern each individual church district. Shoe-fly pie, a molasses-based dessert with a crumb topping, and whoopie pies, two soft cakes sandwiching a sweet filling, both trace back to Pennsylvania Dutch baking traditions rather than being invented for tourists, even though they are now closely associated with Amish country markets and bakeries. Slow fermentation and hand technique genuinely change texture and flavor in ways that mass production struggles to replicate, which is part of why bread from a farmhouse kitchen can taste noticeably different from bread pulled from a supermarket shelf. It would be a mistake, though, to think Amish food comes only from technique. It is important to note that Amish life is not uniform. There are dozens of distinct affiliations and settlements across North America, from the more traditional Swartentruber communities to the comparatively modernized New Order groups, and their approaches to technology, farming, and even food preparation can differ significantly. Some communities use modern refrigeration or gas-powered appliances, while others rely almost entirely on ice boxes, wood stoves, and hand tools. What tends to remain consistent, though never universal, is a shared set of values: simplicity, humility, and a deep respect for the labor that puts food on the table. Meals are often prepared with an unhurried pace that modern kitchens rarely allow, not because Amish life lacks urgency, but because cooking is treated as a necessary and worthwhile use of time, rather than an obstacle to rush through. There is also the matter of community itself. Large family meals, shared harvest dinners, and events like barn raisings, where dozens of people gather to help a neighbor and are fed in return, mean that Amish cooking is frequently produced for groups rather than individuals. Recipes handed down through generations of mothers and grandmothers were refined not for novelty, but for reliability, meant to feed large families and unexpected guests without complaint. That kind of cooking naturally leans towards comfort and consistency, the flavors people already trust, rather than flavors designed to surprise. None of this means Amish food is objectively better than a well-prepared homemade meal anywhere else. A skilled home cook using fresh, seasonal ingredients and taking their time can absolutely produce food that rivals anything served in Lancaster County. What Amish cooking offers, almost by accident of lifestyle rather than intention, is a near total alignment between conditions that food scientists and chefs alike associate with superior flavor: fresh, local ingredients prepared close to harvest, minimal processing, slow fermentation and baking, and food made without the time pressure that defines so much of modern life. Contemporary households often have all the knowledge needed to replicate these results, but rarely the same amount of unhurried time or the built-in seasonal discipline that farm life imposes naturally. Perhaps that's the real lesson hidden inside a slice of shoofly pie or a bowl of chow chow. The appeal was never really about a secret ingredient or a hidden trick passed down in silence. It's about a way of life where growing, preserving, and preparing food remains central rather than incidental, where recipes are inherited rather than searched for, and where a meal is still treated as something worth the time it takes to make well. In a world that increasingly prizes speed, Amish kitchens quietly preserve the opposite value, and in doing so, they remind the rest of us what patience can still taste like.